My name is Livinus Reuben Uku, Esquire. I'm an attorney, a lawyer based in Los Angeles, California. I've practiced law for 27 years now. I cover civil, criminal, and business bankruptcies and individual bankruptcies.
There's justice system, and then USA, where you practice.
Well, the difference I've seen is, I think, for starters, even though we claim in Nigeria that we're practicing the American system, but in reality we are not. It's just a pretense. It seems to me that we are practicing, I don't know what is obtainable in England. England or Great Britain is a unitary system. The United States practices a federal system whereby it's sort of like akin to the regional system that Nigeria had of old. So each state is almost independent of every other state. Each state has their own police resources, their prison systems, their court systems for each state. They're independent of each other. There's not a single chief judge for the entire republic in the United States. Each state has its own judicial system presided over by a chief judge. Each local government has, like Los Angeles has their own California State Superior Court, Los Angeles County. It's owned by the county. Even though the governor appoints the judges, but with the help, assistance of the councilors in that local government. So Los Angeles alone has over 800 judges. It's like a full-blown system. It's the biggest judicial system in the world. About 800 judges under a local government. They have their own budget. They have their own commission that administer these budgets. And both the state, federal, state, and the local government, county, contribute towards that system. And that is the administrative aspect of it. On the judicial aspect of it, each state has its own civil laws. Like contracts, the United States, the federal system doesn't have a contract law. Each state jurisdiction has its own contract law. And so therefore, if two citizens or non-citizens have a lawsuit in California over a contract, and that contract is appealed to the Court of Appeals, which Court of Appeals will it go to? It will be filed in the state Court of Appeal. The federal Court of Appeal is different from the state. So the state has the trial court, Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court of California for each state. They have their own. The federal have their own trial court, Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court of United States. So if there's a dispute over a contract, which is wholly state matter, the controlling court for a contractual dispute is the California Supreme Court. Whatever the California Supreme Court is binding on all the courts of America, including the Supreme Court. So if there is a case of dispute between in a contractual situation or private rights that only emanate from the state constitution, because each state has their own constitution, then guess what? It will go up to the Supreme Court of California. Whatever decision they make is final. It's not appealable to the United States Supreme Court. So we don't have that in Nigeria. How can we have a state court? Then all of a sudden, the Court of Appeals is federal. Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense at all. And then is the Supreme Court of Nigeria making rules about the River State contract, breach of contract. Why? It doesn't make sense. So we must well cancel the federalism system and just call it the unitary system.
So now, with there are a lot of accusations about compromises of the judicial system in Nigeria. What, in your opinion, how, in your opinion, can we improve that kind of situation?
First of all, the Judicial Service Commission should not be presided over by the Chief Judge. Period. Because there's a conflict of interest. An independent Judicial Service Commission that have jurisdiction over discipline of judges should be instituted. And if need be, we don't even want judges as members of that commission. It should be civilians. And they should be the people to, so what if the chief judge is accused of corruption and is the presiding officer of the Judicial Council? That doesn't make sense. So that there has to be an independent Judicial Service Commission whose job, for example, in California, in about 20 years ago or so, there was a judge that has been in the Court of Appeals from 1961. And there was a case that went before them in the Second Appellate District of State of California, of which he was like either the presiding judge or so. And there was a precedent from the Supreme Court. He decided that maybe he knew better. If he was a Supreme Court judge, he would have reasoned differently from the Supreme Court. So when it came for them to vote, because there are 4-panel judges or justices in the appellate system for California. So the panel sat. He decided to abstain from voting because of his consciousness. His conscience would not allow him. So he refused to abide by the precedent set by the State Supreme Court. Immediately, the Judicial Service Commission went in to query them, ready to remove him from they don't care whether he's been there for 30 years. And who are the people questioning him? These are young lawyers that have been maybe lawyers for 20 years, 25 years. He's been a lawyer. The judge has been a lawyer and a judge for over 50 years. It took the intervention of the State Assembly, the governor, even the chief judge, to plead with the Judicial Council to give him a private reproval. He promised never to do it. He had to apologize. So you see how that discipline, And also, the rules of court, they should reorganize the court in system whereby, since there are all these fly-by-night expertise, which is what they're using to actually corrupt the judiciary in Nigeria, they should rewrite the local rules, whereby the assignment of cases should not be individualized or individually picked by the chief judge. They should create a computer system that automatically assigns cases to judges. So it's non-discretionary on part of the chief judge. And number two, they should create a law and motion divisions for each state. Like in let's say Rivers State, we're in Rivers State. So in the Port Harcourt or Lagos State, they should have like maybe about 10 courtrooms that handles law and motions. And they look for the brightest judges to be in those courtrooms. So if there is any ex parte motion filed by any lawyer, it has to go to either maybe 3 judges that handle ex partes. So you can't go and shop, go to Degema or go to Sokoto to look for it. No, you only go to these courtrooms. And those are senior judges that have their pride of place as judges. You can't intimidate them. They know the law just as good as a Supreme Court justice. So it's a privilege to serve in law and motion. So you go there, and whatever decision they make, if you don't like it, you take it on appeal. And that's the way to do it. And also, going back to the discipline of judges, they should, if the rule book says it's unambiguous and it's clearly stated what the consequences are, just follow the rules. Make it simple. Why go and try to, scratch your head? The rule is clear. Follow it. That's my experience.
Okay. Now, the Dele Fano-Timi's matter, you've been following up by, I suppose, a charge against the civil matter has turned to a man being handcuffed and treated like a common criminal. What?
First of all, it's a shame that in our country we've decided to always follow the wrong part of the law. When I went to law school in America, there's a chapter called inchoate criminal acts. And what does that mean? There are criminal acts that are in the books that the government have decided we are not going to enforce it. No judge will even. For example, bigamy, marrying 2 wives, or like criminalization of defamation. Those are inchoate law. It's in the books, but no judge in America would ever enforce that. It's just there for historical. They teach them in law school that this used to be the law. If your wife cheated on you, it was a criminal offense, even in America. They would charge the wife for cheating on the husband. Now, with a police officer gonna arrest a wife for cheating on the husband? Never anymore. Maybe they happened 300 years ago. So, so what is funny and shameful is they claim that this section of the Nigerian Criminal Code was inherited from the colonial government. So what is that? Why are we under this present dispensation having a judge who should declare that inconsistent with the operative portions of the Nigerian Constitution, the right, the freedom of expression, the public debate? It's in conflict with the Constitution. So why should a colonially imposed, antiquated criminal act of defamation supersede the Constitution of Nigeria? So it's not even, it's easy plucking. It's something that is like low bar. You know, so it's very shameful and degrading that that's what they've decided. If lawyer Faye Babalola think that his reputation, if he believes in the Constitution of Nigeria, then he is abusing the system by going to rehearse and elevate this obscure, in my mind, antiquated, irrelevant constitutional act, criminal act, that violate the Constitution that he swore to uphold as the senior advocate of Nigeria, and is going there to use it, I guess, to prove that he's more powerful than Mr. Forotomi, or that he knows the system better. He is a public figure. Under the American system, because he's a public figure, the fact that he's a senior advocate of Nigeria, he has thrown his hat to the fray of public debate. And all courts should allow robust, full-blown public debate. It is through those debate, accusation and counter-accusation, that the truth will now comes up. So what Mr. Forotomi is doing, in my mind, absolutely should be protected, because he has the freedom of information under the Constitution to make those pronouncements. And also, because Mr. Afe Babalola is a public figure, there should be a heightened standard. Say, for example, my mother is a housewife in the village. Now, if you're going to thrust her in the public light, she could bring a lawsuit for defamation and win easily. But if you're somebody like Afe Babalola, or these pastors, or you call them whatever their titles are, general overseers, they are public figures. So how can they be defamed? If you don't want that, you pack your load and go back to your village. You resign as a senior advocate. So there should be 2 standards. A heightened standard for all public figures. Remember, I'm not saying public officials. Public figures. And it should be defined who is a public figure. If you're a newspaper editor, if you're a commissioner, if you're a general manager or MD of Nigerian breweries, you're a public figure. You have to be accountable to the people. And it's through a robust, open-ended public debate that we hold these people accountable to the system. So any judge handling this case ought to dismiss this case with prejudice.
The previous governor, the one that just ruled out his tenure, you've been following the trend of things. What's your take on the whole thing?
Well, the River State problem is artificial. Governor Wike had his 8 years in office. When he was governor, he did perform maybe on road building. So he was focused on roads, probably, and which I applaud him for that. But the truth is, tenure is overweight, and he ought to recognize that governors come and they go. We had Governor Spiff, who did wonderfully well, Okilo, Odili, Mechi, they came and went. So coming to perpetrate and aggrandize a River State government powers to himself, that is unconstitutional, and no judge should support that. If, like I've read, the Supreme Court of Nigeria have held that when held consistent with the Constitution of Nigeria, Federal Republic, that a state assembly member once elected on the party platform cannot cross carpet. That if a state assembly member cross carpets, he immediately relinquishes and vacates the seat. That is a Supreme Court decision. So what ought to happen to avoid these problems we're having in River State? INEC should immediately adopt that and amend its policy. The State Electoral Commission, all states, that's how it's done in the US. Once the Supreme Court make a decision, that's a policy decision. Once it's published, all agencies that decision touches and concerns must immediately go back to their rule books and adopt that policy.
But sometimes these people, they go back to the court and get the court to place injunctions against removing them and all those kind of things.
Yeah, but those judges ought to be disciplined, like I told you about the California State Middle Appellate judge that was disciplined. This is a Supreme Court decision that's not even 10 years old. And now this other person is violating that decision. So does it mean that, okay, what is the presidential effect of a Supreme Court judgment? If the Supreme Court will rule, for example, I just read on the newspapers that the governor of Edo State suspended local government chairman. But there's a subsisting Supreme Court decision that they don't have those kind of powers, the governor. So this governor ought to be impeached. He has violated the Constitution of Nigeria. So he ought to be impeached. So in light of the River State Assembly situation, once they've decamped, those seats, the law is clear. No court should interpret a law that in the black letter is unambiguous. It says that if you decamp, you lose your seat. Any common man could be a judge on that. You don't need to have 3 PhDs, be a judge for 40 years to read. It's common. So even in law, there's a doctrine that says that when the Constitution or a statute is written in plain, ordinary language, it's not subject to technical interpretation. You adopt it. And that's what it says. The Supreme Court have clarified it. No court should now come and second guess the Supreme Court. Because part of their duties as a judge, you've taken an oath to uphold the Constitution of Nigeria. And the final arbiter of what that Constitution stands for is the Supreme Court. It's binding. And it's time for the Supreme Court too to start implementing and disciplining these judges that think that they are counter Supreme Court justices themselves. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, the average citizen doesn't know that once you say the sovereign republic of Nigeria, sovereign means people, not land. The sovereignty is the totality of the people coming together. They are the sovereign, right? So if we know that we are the sovereign collectively, the River State people could decide to rebel and remove a governor. If there's 3 million people, or even 500,000 people amassed at the State Assembly that they want this governor to go, guess what? You have to resign. Look at what happened in Kenya. So that is the citizens are asserting themselves as the sovereign. Look at what happened in Syria. Where's the president? He ran away. Because the sovereign, the true sovereign, decided it's enough. But in Nigeria, if Wike is fighting with Governor Fubara, they were like, well, it's like out-of-body experience. They are seeing that they are fighting. But guess what? What they are doing is affecting you. That's why you can't fuel your car. That's why you can't buy. The prices of things has gone up. Because they are there with blinded eyes, closed ears, and absolutely self-centeredness, egotistical maniacs, if I may call it that way. That's how the political class in Nigeria. So they are working with blind eyes. They are not perceptive. Look, for example, in the US, a governor or a president could lose the elections, a senator, based on the price of goods, commodities, or based on the price of medicine. If the Federal Republic of Nigeria were doing its job, they could go with the power of the federal government and negotiate with the medical, the medicine producers with that power and negotiate for the medicine on behalf of the Nigerian public. But they've not done that. What power does an Igbo trader has to go to Germany or India? What power does he have to negotiate? Whatever the price they gave him, that's what he's going to take. But if the state government decide to go to India with their resources, they meet with the MDs of these companies and say, well, I want the aspirin we're going to buy it at 10 naira, but we need about 1 million tablets. Guess what? It makes sense to them. But if you send one company, they leave it totally up to the again, market forces. But even in America, the inventor of market forces, the government is always on the side. Like they negotiate for the prices of medicine. If you don't have insurance companies too, because they are big, they are bulk purchasers, they negotiate and they sell. That's how it's done all over the world. Here, it's not part of the public discourse. The affordability of medicine, it's just like, the only thing the political class think is to build roads that they cannot even maintain. Food pricing is not their concern. Medicine is not their concern. Security, as long as they have their sirens blowing and they're clearing their way, they feel contented. In California, that I've lived for 36 years, the governor doesn't drive around with sirens. Yet, the budget of California is more than the budget of Africa. The budget of California, if you piece together, is probably almost $5 trillion. When you piece all the budget from each city, each county, including the state and local governments, it's over $10 trillion. Yet, the governor, you could be flying from Los Angeles to San Francisco. The governor is sitting next to you. When the waiters, the air hostess come, they give you the same small cup of soda or Pepsi. They gave me small granule to chew. So how come ours is different? Our budget is not even up to my children's school's district budget, the River State budget. How much is our budget? Look at Los Angeles School District budget, $20 billion. It's more than the budget of Nigeria. Yes. And yet, those people are so humble, they drive themselves. What is wrong with us? What happened to us? You know, we turn ourselves to a banana republic. There's sirens everywhere, not for emergency, they're for politicians. Why? Where did they learn that from? In England, I'm sure, even the prime minister doesn't have a siren, doesn't drive around with a siren. Even the queen doesn't drive around. Where did they learn that from? In the US, it's only the president and vice, first lady, and the speaker that drive around with sirens, or when there's a visiting president.
They don't even put on the siren every time.
They don't, even with the president, there's no siren actually. Because there's no siren. A few times I've seen them, the siren is just situational for a few minutes, and that's it. So we've learned, I don't know where we learned, we're too arrogant, I think. There's this arrogancy that is born out of foolish pride, I think. So the politicians are supposed to be humble. And once elected into office, they're supposed to develop bigger ears to hear from the people. Get more advice, more input from people. Don't become the all too knowing, become the person that knows everything. It should be the other way around. Have your advisors to filter and bring good advice to you. And that will reflect, but when you make it like a one-man show, then guess what? We make these mistakes. Every government, people are dying in this country. Look at what happened in Anambra State. People, almost 150, whatever, 35 people died over rice. Same thing in Ibadan. And that is sad. Abuja, it's sad. Okay, even if you want to distribute rice, why not give vouchers to people? You give credit. Let them go and buy the rice. Why do you have to come and mock them by lining rice, and these hungry people are lining? Will I go and, with my son or my mother or sister, go and stay in that line? So you are mocking them. They are mocking. So that arrogance that we have, you could do this thing quietly. Give these people vouchers. You don't need to go and line up, then have them sit on this hot sun, embarrass themselves and kill themselves over a bag of rice. Why? What has happened to ourselves? Our dignity. You think you are disgracing those people, but you're a black person. You're an African. You're disgracing yourself. It's sin. So in the civilized world, they just give vouchers. You don't have to go and be in line. You could give vouchers, credit to people's bank accounts. You could send them alerts, and they go and buy. Or you could arrange and say, this alert is only for rice. So you can only use it to buy rice. And you allocate the rice to the shop, like Spa or whatever. They can only go to Spa or go to the other one, the other big, whatever. I don't really remember his name. And you go to those stores and buy. Market Square or something like that. That's what, so we need to rethink. Like, for example, President Tinubu, given these problems the country is facing, the first priority is to buy a presidential jet that he claims is $150 million. Now convert that to Naira. That's probably over 200 billion Naira. Yet, there are fuel problem. Look at the stores. You go to the stores, supermarkets, there's nobody there. And their generator is running. That money could have been used to subsidize these business owners, help them out. That's how it's done in other countries. Use that money, help. Use that money, organize the students or the unemployed to go and grow rice. But he only bought a jet for his convenience. And nobody said anything. So those are the problems with, it's like, for example, he's doing the coastal highway. Nobody asked for it. Nobody agitated for it.
Lagos
To Calabar. How that become a priority? Only President Tinubu knows. We don't have electricity. Lagos could make use of maybe additional 4,000 megawatts. You could have built a gas turbine for Lagos with a quarter of that money. You could have built a gas turbine of 2,000 megawatts for Port Harcourt, Abuja, and Kano. I'm sure people will appreciate that more than coastal highway. Meantime, the one that we have, the existing road, It's not good. It's abandoned. Why? Who make these decisions? What is wrong with us? And every government does the same thing. So I think we're in trouble. That's what I believe. We're in trouble.
So what advice do you have for our leaders now that you?
Well, I don't know what advice I give them. First of all, like I stated earlier, their ears are sealed. So until you have a listening political class. I remember when President Jonathan was running this country, and I wrote a letter because I stumbled on an article that spoke about the farmers-herders conflict. Several articles written in the 50s. And they already seen this problem in Nigeria. And the articles from Oxford University, Harvard, UCLA, it says that there's a problem coming in Nigeria. This is from the 50s and 60s. That the southern part of Nigeria is sedentary. People already live here. And because of the desertification or desert encroachment and overgrazing, these animal rearers from the desert are migrating. We migrate to the south, and it's going to create conflicts. That's in the 60s. I shared this article with Jonathan. Guess what? He never made it to him. His advisors blocked it and told me that your mates are writing articles or whatever, executive papers for oil allocation. You're talking about this. I beg, take your thing, and they were not interested. They never got to the president. I prefer the solution they gave there, that they should go to Kano or this Katsina in the desert and create a irrigation system. Give like maybe 10 miles square of irrigation system. That there's ancient grass seeds on the deserts that are in hibernation. And once that water hits them, within a day, it will sprout. And the cows, when they come to the south, sometimes it's the cows leading the Fulani man, because they could smell the water. And they are going, the Fulani man is just following. You know what I'm saying? So that's what they wrote in this article. I tried to share with them that, let's go, if Mr. Jonathan could do this thing over there, and then they use this windpipe technology. You don't even need fuel, just windpipe. And it will pump the water 24/7. And there'll be a green belt in northern Nigeria. And those cows, they're not going to stop. Once they're there, they'll be there for the next 100 years. Because there's water, there's grass. They shoved me with that message. In fact, they hated me for that. So giving advice to Nigerian politicians, I don't know. It brings enmity. But I guess that's my advice to them.